3. Aspects of craving and wholesome desire. Non-action as a form of action. As mentioned above, people act according to their knowledge and understanding, which may simply be at the level of responding to sense stimuli, or it may develop into true wisdom, which is able to determine what is appropriate and inappropriate. In many circumstances, however, instead of initiating an action, people pause, balk, or stop short. In this case, the hesitation, passiveness, or inaction is a form of action, and it may be a potent form of action at that. As will be explained below, craving tanha initiates actions that are prerequisites for acquiring objects of gratification or for protecting the stability of one's cherished sense of self. Here the term action includes non-action. There are many reasons why craving may initiate non-action. For example, one may refrain from acting because by acting one would be deprived of some pleasure that one is currently experiencing, or because one would encounter some kind of trouble or adversity. Even in the case that acting in a particular way would be truly beneficial for one's life, craving may urge one to refrain from acting out of fear of hardship or deprivation. When people develop wisdom and generate wholesome desire as a motivating force, they perform actions they recognize as appropriate and valuable, even though by acting they will face discomfort and be resisting the urge by craving to refrain from acting. Conversely, craving may prompt acting in order to obtain some pleasure, but wisdom, by discerning that such action will damage one's quality of life, will urge one to refrain from acting. When people's wisdom increases but refined forms of craving maintain, these two qualities become intertwined and profit from one another. The behavior of wise individuals is thus more complicated than that of other people. The important issue here is which factor gains the upper hand. Does craving or wisdom direct proceedings? If one applies continual wise reflection, wisdom takes the lead role and becomes increasingly sharper. It ushers in wholesome desire as the driving force for directing one's life to the extent that craving ceases. Here one can see that by removing the factor of craving from the equation, human actions still proceed. Moreover, they are enriched. Formerly, one relied on craving to help protect the sense of self. Now, wisdom guides one's life and paves the way for wholesome desire. As a consequence, one is released from the clutches of craving. B. Means and ends craving as a motivating force. When one gets to the heart of the matter, one recognizes that craving tanha in fact is not a genuine motivation for action, because the act itself is not the priority for craving. As mentioned above, craving desires to consume and acquire things that provide one with pleasure. Wholesome desire chanda, on the other hand, wishes for true completion and fulfillment of all things with which one engages. This dichotomy provides for complexity in regard to action and non-action. For example, Sarah is endowed with wholesome enthusiasm. She sees the interior of a house and wants it to be clean. She wishes for this dwelling to exist in a state of completeness. If it is dirty, she wishes for it to be clean and picks up a broom to sweep the floor. She derives joy and contentment from both from sweeping, which is the cause for the desired result, and from witnessing a clean space, which is the direct result from sweeping. Harry has no interest or delight in cleanliness, but he does have a sweet tooth. His mother suggests that he helps with the sweeping, but he doesn't respond. She thus says, "If you sweep the house, I will buy you some sweets." When he hears this, Harry picks up a broom and sweeps. In fact, Harry does not desire cleanliness. He only sweeps because this action is a means by which he can get some candy. Harry derives no pleasure from sweeping. He may even find it irritating, and he is not determined to do a good job. His mother may need to constantly supervise him. This is because sweeping is the cause for a clean house, which is not the result he desires. His happiness will have to wait until he gets the sweets. To reiterate, craving does not desire the thing or state that is the direct result of an action. Craving urges action only in the case when it is a necessary prerequisite for obtaining desired objects. If there is another way to obtain the desired objects without needing to make effort, craving will prompt one to avoid acting and choose the path of inaction instead. Craving is more often a motivation for inaction than it is for action. When craving leads to an avoidance of action, it may manifest in the form of laziness, whereby one clings to pleasurable sensations. Alternatively, it may manifest in the form of fear, say by being afraid of encountering some form of discomfort while performing an action, or being anxious of losing self-importance. When inaction is needed for craving to get what it wants, that is, increased sensual pleasure or reinforced self-importance, craving urges such inaction, without considering whether positive effects derived from acting may be forfeited. Here are more examples. A child refuses to go to school because he knows that his mother will then increase his allowance for sweets. This is a clear case of inaction being a potent form of action. A man finishes work early in order to drink alcohol and gamble. Someone receives a bribe in order to refrain from work that should be done. Out of laziness, one pays someone else to do tasks that one should attend to oneself or help participate in doing. In this case, one forfeits the satisfaction and delight that is connected to the fruits of one's own labour. Positive action is initiated by wholesome desire chanda, stemming from wisdom, which recognizes what is truly valuable and what should be done. Wisdom rouses wholesome desire for bringing these things to completion. Even in the case when craving initiates action, there are perils, because the preconditions mentioned earlier establish the following equation. Craving urges action out of delight for the pleasure derived from such action. The more one acts, the more pleasure one receives. The more pleasure there is, the more one desires. The more one desires, the more one acts. In many occasions, people keep acting until the positive results of these actions are squandered. Wholesome desire, on the other hand, initiates action out of delight for its positive and wholesome effects. The more one acts, the more these positive effects increase, and the more delight one experiences. The more delight one has, the more one acts. One continues acting until the goodness and integrity reaches completion. The action fully corresponds with its objective. In some, craving more often than not urges inaction, and even when it initiates action, these actions are hazardous and lead to more harmful effects than beneficial ones. One should thus abandon craving and instead foster wisdom and cultivate wholesome desire. For formal basis for the principles of desire, a linguistic analysis of the term chanda. As mentioned earlier, the confusion surrounding the meaning of desire, which is viewed in an overly restrictive sense, by associating all desire with craving, stems from an erroneous and inadequate understanding of some key Pali terms. There are many Pali terms denoting desire. Some of these terms are complex, both in terms of their definitions and how they are used in speech and writing. This complexity invites confusion. First, let us distinguish and clarify some of these difficult terms. The Pali word, which is used in both a general sense, covering the entire spectrum of desire, and in a technical sense, referring specifically to wholesome desire, is chanda. Chanda may be translated in many different ways, including will, desire, delight, enthusiasm, zeal, contentment, satisfaction, aspiration, yearning, wish, love, and passion. At this point, let us simply refer to it as desire. Drawing from different sources, the commentaries mention three kinds of desire, chanda. 1. Tanha chanda, desire as craving tanha, unwholesome desire. 2. Katu kamyata chanda, the desire to act, the wish to act. Occasionally this term is used in a neutral sense, application to both wholesome and unwholesome contexts, but generally it is used in a positive, wholesome sense. 3. Kusala dhamma chanda, desire for virtuous qualities, wholesome desire for truth. It is often abbreviated to Kusala Chanda, love of virtue, aspiration for goodness, or Dhamma Chanda, love of truth, aspiration for truth. 1. Tanha Chanda. The term chanda in this context is a synonym for craving tanha, in the same way as the terms raga, lust, and lobha, greed. This form of chanda is found frequently in the Pali Canon, including in the term kamachanda, sensual desire, which is the first of the 5 hindrances, nitvarana, and is equivalent to kamatana, craving for sensuality. Chanda in this context is usually used on its own, but sometimes it is used together with synonyms. For example, in this passage by the Buddha, with the relinquishment of desire, chanda, lust, raga, delight, nandi, craving, tanha, and clinging, upadana, regarding the I forms I consciousness on things cognizable through I consciousness, I have understood that my mind is liberated. Because chanda in this context is identical to tanha, it is possible to replace the term chanda with the term tanha in the following passages: a desire for existence, a desire for sense pleasures, delight for the body, love of sexual intercourse, delight in the body and feelings, which are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and insubstantial, and desire for sounds, smells, tastes, which are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and insubstantial. Compound words are created with chanda in a similar way to tanha. For example, rupa chanda, delight in forms; sada chanda, delight in sounds; gandha chanda, delight in smells; rasa chanda, delight in tastes; Pota Bachanda, delight in tactile objects, and Dhammachanda, delight in mental objects. Chanda can be used in the context of human relationships, referring to love or affection, as is seen in the Gandhabhaga Sutta, where it refers to love for one's wife and children. In this same sutta it states Chanda is the root of suffering, in the same manner as the second noble truth, which states that craving is the cause for suffering. In another sutta the Buddha says that one should abandon Chanda for things that are impermanent, dukkha, non-self. In the same way that in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta he says that one should abandon craving. 2. Katu Kamyata Chanda, the desire to act. This form of desire is equivalent to the group of mental factors, Cetasika, classified in the Abhidhamma as miscellaneous or apportioned. Pakinaka Cetasika, that is, they can arise in both a wholesome mind state and in an unwholesome mind state. The Katu Kamyata Chanda, most familiar to students of Buddhism, is the desire or enthusiasm Chanda, classified as the first factor in the four paths to success, Iddhipada, and which is also the essential quality in the four right efforts, Sampadana. The meaning of Katu Kamyata Chanda is very similar to the meaning of Virya, energy, Vayama, effort, and Usaha, endeavour. These terms are occasionally used together to complement each other. This form of desire is considered an essential factor in Dhamma practice. The commentaries tend to include this form of desire in the third form of Kusala Dhammachanda, as if they are one and the same. For example, the desire in the four paths to success and in the four right efforts is classified as both Katu Kamyata Chanda and Kusala Dhammachanda. 3. Kusala Dhammachanda. This form of desire is mentioned in one sutta, in which it is the final factor in a list describing the 6 things that are difficult to encounter in the world. It is considered an essential factor for people in order to benefit from Buddhist teachings or to lead a virtuous life, because although one may have encountered the first 5 factors, if one lacks a desire for wholesome qualities, one will not be able to truly benefit from these other factors. Monks. The appearance of 6 things is rare in the world. What 6? 1. The appearance of a perfectly enlightened Buddha is rare in the world. 2. The appearance of one who teaches the Dhamma proclaimed by the Buddha is rare in the world. 3. To be reborn in the land of the noble ones is rare in the world. 4. The possession of unimpaired physical and mental faculties is rare in the world. 5. The absence of foolishness and dim-wittedness is rare in the world. And 6. A desire for wholesome qualities is rare in the world. The Chanda most frequently referred to in the context of Dhamma practice is desire, and enthusiasm is found in the teaching on the 4 right efforts, Samapadana, complete effort. That person generates desire for the non-arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome states. He makes an effort, arouses energy, raises up the mind, and perseveres. He generates desire for the abandoning of arisen, evil, unwholesome states, for the arising of unarisen, wholesome states, for the maintenance of arisen, wholesome states, for their non-decline, increase, expansion, fulfillment, and development. This passage is considered a definition of the four right efforts. Here, wholesome desire chanda is designated as an essence or a principal ingredient of effort. Virya, which is included in the 37 factors of enlightenment, Bodhipakkhya Dhamma. The term chanda in other passages related to Dhamma practice has a similar meaning. For example, the desire to fulfill all wholesome qualities, the desire to undertake training, the desire to develop the faculty of wisdom, the desire to abandon all mental impurities, and the desire for nibbana. Chanda in these cases should be interpreted as both Katu Kamyata Chanda and Kusala Dhamma Chanda, as both the desire to act and the desire for virtuous qualities, or in brief, the desire to do good. The Vibhanga of the Abhidhamma defines chanda in the four right efforts and in the four paths to success as Katu Kamyata Kusala Dhamma Chanda. The four right efforts. In the phrase generate chanda, how is chanda interpreted? Whichever delight, aspiration, desire to act, or wholesome love of truth there is called chanda. The four paths to success. In the four paths to success, what is the path to success of aspiration? Chanda idipada. At whichever time a monk in this dhamma and discipline cultivates the transcendent jhanas, lokuttara jhana, the delight, aspiration, desire to act, or wholesome love of truth at that time is called chanda. This definition in the Vibhanga is the basis for later commentarial interpretations of chanda as a distinctively wholesome quality, and is most likely the origin of the convention of combining Katu Kamyata Chanda with Kusala Dhamma Chanda into a single factor.